Hey, my name is Jimmy Fung. Welcome to today's video. In today's video, this is actually day 4 of the 5 days to $10,000 challenge. And for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, you don't know what the challenge is, this is your very first time hearing about it. What it is I am posting 5 different videos, essentially 5 different days, helping people go from zero to getting their own lead generation agencies to $10,000 per month in the next 90 days. Right? So today is day 4 where we will be talking about sales. In the previous video, in day 3, we talked about what it takes to craft your 6-figure offer, what it takes to put together a high converting cold email campaign, and what it takes to build a video sales letter that converts cold traffic, people who just don't know who you are, people who don't like you, basically just random strangers, and get them to book sales calls with you. In today's video, day 4, we'll be talking about the sales process and what you can do to collect $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 after a 30 to 40 minute Zoom call. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you drop me a like, make sure you drop me a subscribe, make sure you comment with your questions, whatever the case is. And in the description below, I also put a link to join the newsletter where I give out just random tips that I randomly think about how to start your own business or how to get your own lead generation agency, continue growing it, scaling, getting more clients, making more money, delivering service for your clients. So that's pretty much it. Hope you find this video valuable today, and I'll see you on day 5, which will come out 2 days from now. See ya. So now that you have your cold email campaigns firing, you have your VSLs, you have all of that stuff set up, to sending emails every single day, you're getting replies, you're replying back to those people, you're finding a lot of people who are interested in your cold email service, your lead generation service. Obviously, your next step after this is to sign your first client. But how do we find people and turn them into paying clients? Well, obviously the next step of this aspect of building your own lead generation agency is taking the actual sales calls, right? And you absolutely need to do this in order to sign your first clients and then to get to $10,000 a month. And this is the part of the business, the lead generation business model as a whole, where a lot of people just kind of struggle because these conversations usually take place over a Zoom call or a Google Meets call or Microsoft Teams, whatever the case is, it takes place over a video call. And it does require practice, and I'd be lying to you and just not being honest with you if I told you that the very first sales call that you will ever take in your life is the one that you're likely to close your first deal, paying you $2,000, $2.5K, $3,000, right? It's just not likely that happens, and it's just not really how it works. So as a general benchmark, understand that the industry closing rate is around 20. And what that means is if you generate 10 sales calls for yourself, expect that you should be able to close somewhere around 2 deals, right? And obviously that is not set in stone where every 10 calls, you will absolutely close 2 deals. It's more of a law of percentages. So maybe if you generate 10 calls, maybe you close 1 deal, maybe you close 3 deals, maybe you close 2, right? It's somewhere around that range, but the industry average is around 20%, right? And understand that there is a nuance to taking sales calls. But again, practice does make perfect. And everyone, myself included, everyone's been at a point where they never took a single sales call in their life and they kind of just sucked at sales. And I was one of those people. 2 years ago, when I was first starting out in online business, I didn't even know what Zoom was. And the very first time I downloaded Zoom was for my business. So I had no experience. I didn't know what I was talking about. I never took a single sales call before. And over the last 2 years, I've taken probably well over 1,000 sales calls at this point. And I'm just at a level where I'm just highly proficient at it. And the reason why I'm proficient at it is obviously because I took 1,000 sales calls, 1,000 plus sales calls. So I knew that learning how to sell was the key to become successful in really just any business venture, even outside this lead generation agency stuff. And I'm very excited, very happy really that I decided to stick with learning how to sell, because I'm not gonna lie, sometimes it was kind of hard. It wasn't always easy. I got rejected a lot in sales calls. I dealt with a lot of extremely disrespectful, extremely rude people, and sometimes I felt like giving up, and I'm just very happy I didn't, right? And this is a quote that I found from Mark Cuban, where he literally said, learn to sell, because in business, you're always selling, whether that's to your prospects, whether that's to investors, whether that is to employees. And to be the best salesperson, put yourself in the shoes of the person to whom you're selling to. Don't sell your product, solve their problems. And I absolutely love this quote because there's really two components of it. The first one is him saying that learning to sell is one of the most important skills that you can learn. Anyone can learn, whether you're in business or you're not, right? Even if you're trying to work a job, you're working your 9 to 5, you still need to learn how to sell if you want to progress up that career ladder, because you're selling your bosses on why you are the best candidate to get promoted. You're selling yourself in a job interview. So that's the first component. The second component is Mark Cuban giving advice on how to actually sell, because a lot of people think that to sell and to sell effectively, to sell well, means you're kind of just being a high pressure snake oil salesman. And to be honest, that couldn't be further from the truth, because the best type of salespeople, especially in this business as a lead generation agency, is to be more of a consultant, where you're consulting people on, this is your problem, I have the solution for this. So following the sales strategies and the processes outlined in this video today, outlined in this chapter, I kind of just went from being a noob at sales, a rookie at sales, to collecting thousands of dollars at the end of a 30 to 40 minute sales conversation, 30 to 40 minute Zoom conversation. This is actually a screenshot of my Stripe, where as you can see, these are all payments that I've received at the end of a sales call. And these aren't like 2-hour sales calls. They're one call closes where I'm selling to people that I've never spoken to prior to jumping on these Zoom calls. And I was able to collect 6,000, 3.5K, 4.5K, 2.5K, 5K. And obviously there's a lot more, but I just took this as a screenshot. So jumping into it, I first wanted to talk about the mindset that no one shares, because there's a lot of videos online, a lot of people giving advice and suggestions on how to actually become a good salesperson. But oftentimes what I see is people just talk about tactics, strategies, say this, say that, ask this type of question. When your prospects ask you this, say, I don't know, I need to think about it. This is what you should say. But oftentimes, a lot of what makes a successful salesperson a good salesperson is the mindset that they have. What's in here? What's in between the two ears, right? And just jumping right into it, competency is the name of the game. And understand that you are there to close a deal, and you are there to progress that conversation forward, to get to the next step on the call. It's really that simple. And honestly, when I review calls every single day, because I review my own sales calls, I review my salesperson's sales calls, the bottom line to a lot of failed attempts is that it really sounds like just two guys chatting. And at the end, the guy who's pitching, the salesperson, is suddenly asking for a decision. And this is one of the biggest mistakes I've seen, because a lot of people say that you want to build rapport, you want to build trust. So what happens is a lot of salespeople take that advice and then they think they need to talk about the weather. They think they need to talk about and ask the person, the prospect, what they did over the weekend, what they did on Sunday, where they live, all of this random stuff. So what happens is that conversation between, it kind of just sounds like two guys just chatting it up because they just waiting for the elevator or something, right? When in reality, a sales conversation is very specific. There's a very specific reason why the two people are there. One person's a salesperson consulting the other person and selling and pitching the service or product to the prospect. That's literally what it is. And understand that throughout the sales call, there are different phases at each point of the call. And as the person running the sales call, the salesperson, it's your responsibility to make a decision at each point. You need to decide, is this someone who I can help? And if they are someone I can help, let's move them along to the next phase. Or is this someone who I can't really help? They just don't really have a problem. Whatever I'm selling, the lead gen stuff, I can't really help them. And if that is the decision you make, that you can't really help them or do much for them, they're probably not someone that you want to work with, and you should probably stop selling them and stop pitching them, right? You want to be ethical here. You don't want to just be selling everyone under the sun, no matter what they are, even if they don't run businesses. That's not what you want to do. And if you want to become an effective salesperson, you should really only be selling to people who you know you can help, who you know have a massive problem, and that your product or service, or in this case, the lead generation service, can actually help them. And this is a very important mindset that you need to have going into the call. And in the beginning, so 2 years ago, when I was taking my own sales calls, I actually used to be really nervous before taking these calls. And what happened was I realized something that completely shifted my mindset. I realized that if a scammer can call someone by picking up the phone, right? So I get a lot of scam calls every day on my phone, and understand that if a scammer could pick up the phone, call a random person and scam them out of thousands of dollars, so they convince someone to pay them thousands of dollars for essentially a scam, then how come you're struggling to sell your legitimate service, which actually provides a value? You're not scamming people. These scammers who are literally not providing any value, not even a tiny little bit of value, is still making thousands of dollars. So how come you as a salesperson, you can't even make a dollar while delivering actual value, while solving an actual problem? And once I understood this, I heard this from a quote. I don't even know where I got this quote from, but I heard someone tell me this, or I read it somewhere probably, and it completely changed the game for me. Because understand that you are there on that call because the person that you're chatting with has a legitimate problem, which is why they booked that call. And you are there to figure out if you can help them solve this problem or not. So that's the mindset that you want to have before you even jump into the sales conversation, before we even talk about the tactics, the specific structure at the sales call, all of that stuff. That's the mindset that you want to adopt. After that, right, we talked a little bit about mindset, which is extremely, extremely important. I next want to talk about pre-sales and nurturing your prospect, because what most people think is the sales starts the second the two people, you and the prospect, jump onto that Zoom call. But that couldn't be further from the truth. The sale actually starts even before you jump onto the Zoom call. And the selling starts once their name appear on your calendar. So I use Google Calendar. Maybe you do too. Maybe you use Microsoft Outlook. Whatever calendar you use, whenever someone schedules a call and you see a call is booked, that's when the selling starts. And you need to make the most out of your availability. Every call on your calendar really needs to be qualified and properly prepared for the call. And that way, it gives you the highest possible chance of closing that person. And you're not just talking to random people who are unqualified, who show up, who don't even know what you're talking about, any of that stuff, because those people are unqualified. Understand that the more educated a prospect is prior to jumping onto that Zoom call, the more bought in they are, the more invested they are, and the easier it will be for you to close them. And what you need to do is, as people are setting up calls with you, so you're probably going to be using something like Calendly, maybe Acuity scheduling, or all of these different calendar tools. What you need to do is you want to add a few brief qualifying questions that someone would need to fill out before they actually book in a call. And that those type of questions will help you understand their business a little bit more and help you do a little bit of qualifying, just to make sure that the people who are booking calls with you, they are actually businesses, for one, they have the budget and they're ready to move forward. You also need to be researching your prospects before each call. And that way you're prepared to understand and to talk about their background. You want to understand what company they're from, what services they provide, what do they sell, what are their general titles for the person that you're chatting with, etc. And to be honest, this really doesn't take too much work. The prepping stuff doesn't take that much work. It probably takes you 5 minutes. I do this 5 minutes prior to a sales call. So make sure you research and have an idea for your prospect, because the worst thing you want to do is jump onto that Zoom call completely unprepared. They ask you a question and you just don't know the answers, right? That's actually how you lose a sale, and that's how you blow the sale. And almost no one ever talks about the importance of nurturing prospects prior to the sales call. So when I first started booking sales calls, I actually overlooked this completely. I was getting a lot of sales calls, but probably like 30-40% of people that I was chatting with was just strictly unqualified. And as I started sharing more resources, because I was just testing around the pre-nurturing stuff, warming people up, I was just testing different things around, I actually started sharing resources and sales assets prior to my own sales calls. And after I started doing that, my closing rates increased significantly. So what I started doing was I set up automations to, number one, remind them of the call, remind the prospects, hey, our call is starting in 10 minutes. What I do is I make sure that prospects can only book for the next day or two, because I think by default, Calendly opens up your availability for probably like a week, something like that. But you don't want that to happen, because if someone books really far out, if they're booking a week in advance, there's a very strong chance that they would just forget about the call and they'll just no-show. So you want to put this out for the next day or two. And then what you also want to do is set up Calendly reminder emails. So I have a couple, I think I have 2 emails, which is in this picture. And I have one that is 24 hours beforehand and 2 hours beforehand, where I'm sending these email reminders to remind people of the sales call. And obviously you could put more if you want. I've tested with more, but there's a little bit of a balance because obviously you don't just want to annoy people and tell them over and over and over again, hey John, our call is happening at 11 a.m. on Monday. You don't want to just be annoying people like that. What I also do as part of these email reminders is I like to send case studies as a resource because I have case studies. But if you don't have case studies, what you want to be doing is sending additional resources surrounding the service that you provide. So if you're selling lead generation, you're selling cold emails, you want to create other sales assets to prove your credibility and that you actually know what you're doing, that you're actually an expert at cold emails. Because trust me, no one will buy your service. No one will pay you $2,000 to $3,000 if they don't think you're an expert at your service. So what you could do is you could create PDFs, you could create docs, you could create white papers to do this. But the most effective form of sales asset in my own experience and my own testing is video content, which allows you to put a face to your business and show that, show prospects that you're real. We're living in some crazy times where there's AI generated avatars and all that stuff, right? So what that will do is this will do two things. This will accomplish two things, really. The first one is it will begin selling your prospects on your service. You're going to be hyping them up on the benefits of working with you, working with your own agency, working with your business, and really dismantling any objections or ounces of uncertainty that they might have prior to the call. The second thing that this will accomplish is it will disqualify prospects that your service is not a good fit for. What those prospects will need to do is they should probably watch this video and they'll really just know right away if they are a good fit or not. And what you want to do is putting more information in front of your prospects prior to the call will speed up the conversion window and shorten that sales cycle and make your job just a million times easier. And I want to ask you this, and this is a little bit of a hypothetical. If you were trying to buy a service, right? Let's say you're trying to work with an accountant to file your tax returns because in Canada, it's almost tax return season and I'm actually just looking for accountants. But let's say you were looking for accountants to file your tax returns. If you were deciding between two accountants to do this, to file your tax returns, would you work with the accountant who posts a lot of videos talking about his services, talk about timelines, just talk about accounting related stuff? Or would you work with the one who just barely exists online? And that's a legitimate question because 10 times out of 10, you're probably just going to work with an accountant who has content online as opposed to the one who just doesn't exist. And the reason why is because having content just showcases your credibility. And what that does is it warms up cold prospects to you, to your business, and to your service. So that's why you need to start creating content. And it doesn't need to be a super well put together, hyper edited video. It doesn't need to look like a Netflix style production movie or anything like that. And my first video sales letters, my first sales assets, which we kind of talked about in the previous video. If you haven't watched that, go watch that. My first video sales letter that I put together that explains my process was put together on a Google Docs with zero editing, and I put it together in an hour, right? And here's actually a link for it. I went over it in the previous video, so go ahead and watch that, day 3. And I titled it, How We Make It Unreasonable for Service Businesses to Not Sign 3 to 5 Clients Monthly. And obviously what you want to do is you want to make your VSL better just over time. But when you're first building your agency, you have larger priorities to think about. Time is of the essence. And what is most important is making sure that this gets done because that's just the most important. And you can always revisit this down the line, right? 2 months from now, 3 months from now, once you have some clients, there's some cash in the bank, you have some additional time, go back and remake your VSL. You can always remake it, but don't get too caught up in making it perfect the very first time that you do it. So once your operations are dialed, or if you just want to get quicker results, what you could also do is ask the prospects for the phone numbers in the Calendly. And what you can then do is pick up the phone and dial the prospect to quickly chat with them. This is what people refer to as a triage call. You're kind of just qualifying people over a quick 2-3 minute call. You want to just ask them about their business and what they're looking to accomplish or what they're looking for at a high level. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend this in the beginning, but you could do this down the line. What I do is we cold call prospects after they book at our own agency. And although the number of sales calls definitely decrease a little bit because we're qualifying people a lot more, the people that we do end up chatting with on a Zoom call are extremely qualified and the closing rate is extremely, extremely high. And this is literally how people online other business owners how they close 10K deals, 20K deals, or even 50K deals over a quick Zoom call. And I know someone who closes PR services. So they run a PR agency, or they are a salesperson, a closer at a PR agency, and they close deals for $150,000. And they do this over a 45-minute Zoom call. And obviously they have setters who pre-call these leads just to qualify them a little bit. But that really goes to show that this process works really, really well for deals of all sizes. Literally, I know someone doing this using a similar process, closing deals for literally up to $150,000, right? But obviously, when you're first starting your business, you're first starting your own lead generation agency, cold calling is not necessary, and the email sequences that you set up in Calendly will just get it done. So as a key takeaway, what you're doing is you're creating sales assets to build trust, to build credibility with people who just have never met you, and you're essentially warming them up for the sales call. All right, so jumping right into the sales process. And I think this is very important because there's a very specific way that you want to navigate these sales calls, these sales conversations. Again, right? It's not just two random people chatting it up, asking about the weather, talking about what they did over the weekend. There's a very specific structure that you want to follow. And I outlined this in this doc. But what I did first was I put it on a flowchart, right? So if we zoom in a little bit and we look at the sales process, the very first thing that you want to do, kind of as a way to navigate the conversation, is you first want to understand their business. You want to ask them questions about, what do they sell? Who do they sell to? What type of things do they solve for? What type of problems do they solve? That type of thing, right? You want to understand their business. After you understand their business, you then want to understand the current sales process, because obviously as a lead generation agency, we're selling a sales system, a sales infrastructure of a sort, because we're helping people generate sales calls, generate sales opportunities. So before we even pitch a service, we need to understand what they're currently doing inside of their own sales process. Are they running ads? Are they relying on organic? Are they relying on referrals and word of mouth? Are they already doing stuff with cold emails? What does that look like? We need to understand the current sales process. After we understand the current sales process, it's very, very important that you understand their problem, because the way to sell people, even as the quote from Mark Cuban above was, is you need to be solving problems, because people won't buy unless they have a massive problem and unless they figure out or they think that what you have is the solution to the problem. So you really need to understand what the problem is and if they have a problem. And if you're at this point at the sales conversation and you just conclude that they don't have a problem, or you think to yourself that you just can't really help them because the problem isn't really related to what you solve, which is lead generation, then you just need to end the call and move on with your day, right? Because you probably wouldn't be able to sell to them anyways. Assume that they have a problem. After that, you want to qualify a little bit, which are these blue squares over here. You want to qualify them, figure out what their thoughts are on cold emails, because surprisingly, there are people who I've taken sales calls with. I go through the process and they tell me at the end, oh, Jimmy, but I think cold emails is illegal. I think cold emails is spamming. I don't want to integrate this into my business because I just don't like it. It's unethical. Whatever the case is, and it's all wrong, but you don't want to be arguing with people on a sales call, because if they think that is unethical, if they think that it is spamming, if they think that it is illegal, there's almost nothing you can show them, nothing that you can tell them that will convince them otherwise, because this is a pre-existing thought that they had prior to the conversation that they have with you. After that, the next qualifying question is you want to ask them and figure out what success looks like to them. If we were to work together, what does an end result look like? What does success look like? Is that 5 calls, 10 calls, 20 calls, a client, 2 clients, 3 clients? What does that look like? Qualify them on timelines as well, because if you don't do this, you're going to go to the end of the sales call and you're going to hear people say, oh, I want to think about it, or I want to add this into my business in 6 months, in a year from now, next quarter. Because if you hear people say that to you, prospects say that to you, it means that you didn't qualify them on timelines. After that, assuming that you qualify them and they're all good, you want to ask for permission to pitch them, right? You never just want to pitch people just right off the bat. It's a very poor idea and people will just not pay attention. So you always want to be asking for permission before you pitch people, and then obviously your pitch. So this is the overall sales process that you want to leverage, that you want to use as you are selling lead generation as a service for yourself. But being more specific into it, I laid it out into 5 different sections. So as you are jumping onto these sales calls, these Zoom conversations, the very first thing that you want to do is obviously introduce yourself and set the agenda. Pretty self-explanatory, right? You're introducing yourself, you're getting to know them, introducing themselves. You don't want to just talk about the weather over here. You just want to have a very short discussion, probably like a minute or 2 max, where you're jumping on. What I like to ask is I like to ask people, hey John, where are you calling in from today? Oh, you're calling in from New York City. Nice. I'm in Toronto, Canada, way up north. So if it's good with you, we could jump right into it because I'm setting the agenda, right? And then what I like to say after that is I say something along the lines of, John, so looking at the calendar, I know we put roughly 40 minutes on the calendar for today. Depending on what we talk about, we probably wouldn't be using that entire time. But if it's good with you, why don't we jump right into it? So I'm asking for permission to start. Once I get that permission, the first thing I say is, cool, John. So just the way that I run these calls, kind of just to lay out an agenda for what we will be talking about today. Typically speaking, I want to start by asking some questions about your business. I want to understand what it is that you sell. I looked at your website. I know that you sell XYZ, but I want to hear directly from you. So I guess with that being said, I see that you're selling ads as a service. I see that you're selling recruitment as a service. You're selling them to tech companies. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? So I'm setting the agenda and I'm transitioning into the next phase of the call, but I'm always asking for permission to ask them questions. So I'm not just jumping right into it and the first thing out of my mouth is, so John, tell me about your business. That's not what I'm doing. I'm asking for permission before I ask them questions about their business. The next phase of the call is what I like to call the current business state. Pretty self-explanatory. So at this phase of the call, you're asking some questions to understand the current business state. Pretty self-explanatory, right? I'm asking them questions to understand what products or services do they sell. Are you selling ads? Is this a recruitment offer? Are you selling IT services? What does that look like? Oh, you're selling a software. What exactly do you solve? What are the key pain points, the key problems that you solve for your own clients? How much do you charge? What are your price points? What industries and niche do you sell to? And what you find is some clients, they sell to a bunch of different industries, right? They might sell ads to 5 different industries, right? But you really need to understand what industries and niche do they work with and which industries do they found the best results in, right? These are questions that you want to understand. And then obviously you want to know what the end result of the clients is. So for example, let's say that you talk to a prospect, they tell you that they run an ads agency, an advertising agency. They're selling Facebook ads, they're selling Google ads, they're selling YouTube ads to e-commerce stores. That is not an end result. That's just the service that they sell. Okay, John, so you sell ads to these e-commerce stores. What will you say is the end result that you provide for your clients? Is it a higher click-through rate? Is that more impressions? Is that an increased ROAS, return on ad spend? What does a tangible end result look like? Are you helping them get more customers, just get more brand awareness, grow their Instagram followers? What does that look like? These are end results that you need to understand for your clients, because the only way for you to work with them and for you to get them great results down the line, if you decide to work with them, is you need to understand the end results. And if your prospects don't even understand that, then it's kind of like a no-go, right? After that, the next phase of the sales call is what I like to call the current sales process. So again, right, we're selling lead generation as a service. So it's very important that we understand what are they currently doing right now to generate sales opportunities and to land new clients. So you want to ask them questions such as, what are you currently doing right now to get new customers, to get new clients, right? Oh, you're using referrals, word of mouth, stuff like that. How is that going for you? How do you currently book meetings for your own business, right? You're asking those questions. What are the results of your current process? Again, right? Oh, you're using ads. What's the ROAS on that? Are you profitable running these ads? How many meetings are you getting? Are you getting 5 meetings, 10 meetings, 15 meetings a week? What does that look like? And this is how you probe for questions, because oftentimes at this section of the sales conversation, when you're asking people about what they're doing to generate sales calls and you ask them what the results are, a lot of the times people will just tell you something along the lines of, well, I'm relying on word of mouth and referrals. That's mainly what we do to get sales calls, and it's not enough, right? It's very inconsistent. We might get 1 meeting a month at best, and we obviously need more. That's a problem. When you hear someone say something like that, that's a problem. And what they're looking for, what they're telling you is they want to figure out a solution. They want the answer towards getting consistent sales calls because one a month is just not getting it done. So you want to understand the results of the current process, and more likely than not, that is where you will find the questions. You might need to dig a little bit deeper, because what I've also found is oftentimes the very first answer that a prospect gives you is not that people are lying, but is not necessarily the best answer. People might just sugarcoat the answer, and you really need to dig deep, get them to expand. When you say that it's very inconsistent, John, word of mouth and referrals is very inconsistent. How do you mean by that? What would you like it to look like? You're digging a little bit deeper. You also want to understand, have they tried cold emails before? Or if they haven't tried cold emails before, have they ever considered using cold emails as a channel? Again, you want to qualify them. You want to ask them what their thoughts about cold emails was. And if they did try it, what happened? Or if they haven't tried it, why haven't they tried it yet? You also want to ask them questions such as, have you tried another lead gen agency? Have you worked with someone else? A lot of people that I've spoken to, sometimes they say, oh yeah, we worked with another lead gen agency and it just never worked out. So these are really good opportunities because you're getting a lot of information. You're extracting information from your prospects that will give you ammo that you could use in your own pitch. Because if, for example, let's say you're talking to a prospect and they say that they've tried cold emails previously. They tried it half a year ago and it just never worked out. You ask them, okay, John, so you tried cold emails 6 months ago and it just never worked out. Why do you think that is? From the best of your understanding, do you think it might have been a volume issue, offer issue, maybe you're just saying the wrong things, or you're just reaching out to the wrong people? What would you say the issues are? And let's say John says to you, well, Jimmy, I'm not too certain, but I think if I was to take a guess, the reason why our cold emails didn't work 6 months ago when we tried it was because we just weren't sending enough volume. We were sending 50 emails a day. Now that you hear that John told you that he tried cold emails and it didn't work because he thinks that volume is an issue, inside your actual pitch, you can now focus a little bit more on emphasizing the fact that you will be sending more volume. Because if you don't ask him these questions and you just randomly pitch a service, it's very hard to align the value stack of your own service, of your cold email service, to the needs of your clients. And if you don't ask these questions, you're essentially just throwing random darts on the wall and hoping something sticks, which is obviously a very inefficient way to sell your services. The next phase of the call, you want to understand the future business state. So after you understand what they're currently doing right now, what their business is about, how they're currently generating sales calls and getting results, what are the goals with cold outreach? If we were to work together, John, if we were to help you build an automated cold email system, what would ideal results look like for you 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now? Is that 5 meetings a week, 10 meetings a month, 20 meetings a month, 10 meetings a week? What does that look like? Is it more so just from clients? You don't care that much about how many meetings, you just need clients. What does that specifically look like for you? What does success look like for you? And again, it's very, very important that you ask these questions, because the answers that you get, you will be able to use them as fuel for your actual pitch. If you hear John say, well, Jimmy, I want to get 10 calls a month, then inside your sales pitch, you will talk about how you would be able to get him 10 sales calls a month. And a large aspect of that is by sending a lot of volume. So you see how you're taking the answers that your prospects give you, you're using them as fuel for your actual pitch, so that when you're pitching, you're just way more relevant and you're able to tie what the prospect wants with your own service, hence making your service just way more valuable. That's essentially what you're doing. After that is obviously your pitch. This is the part of the sales conversation where you start talking more than your prospects. Up until now, this entire part of the sales call, you're really just asking them questions, good questions, thought-provoking questions, and hearing their answers and getting their answers to carry the conversation forward. In the pitch section, what you want to be doing is talking about your actual business. And I would advise you to not be boring. Talk about everything at a high level, because understand that if, let's say, you're talking about setting up cold email accounts on Microsoft Admin Center and you're warming up on Smart Lead, I wouldn't even talk about Smart Lead. I would just talk about it at a very high level. And the reason why is because if someone was curious, if your prospect was curious about how you do it, they're going to ask you. But if you just talk about all these random things, you tell your your prospects, oh yeah, we do this. These are the features. These are the amount of emails that we're setting up. They don't care. And if they don't care and you're still talking about it, what will happen is it will become extremely boring. People will just not pay attention to what you have to say. So the way you want to pitch, just be smart about it. Don't go into too much detail. Try to keep in mind that people will get bored if you're just rambling on for 20 minutes straight, talk about some random stuff. Keep it short, keep it precise, keep it direct. Talk about the expected end results for your clients. Again, take the answers that you hear from your prospects when you're asking them about the current sales process, the problems that they're facing, and what they like and what they consider success, and use them inside of your actual pitch. What you want to do is make sure you're walking through your process to achieve this result, right? Break down the system, break down your cold email system in a very easy and simple way. What I like to do is I break down the cold email system in 4 simple ways. So I say something along the lines of, so John, obviously we are a lead generation agency. We build cold emails for B2B businesses. What we really do, just to sum it all up, is for our clients, we run them through a 4-step sequence, 4 key steps. The first step is obviously we want to understand their business. We want to understand what they sell, who they sell to, the key problems they solve. And the reason we're getting these answers and understanding their business is because we were crafting a strong offer that resonates with the market. That's step 1. Understanding our client's business and crafting a relevant offer. Step 2 is to build the actual cold email infrastructure. So obviously we're sending cold emails, right? We're using Microsoft Outlook. We're using Google Workspace. Obviously these are not free, but what we're doing is we're combining a strategy of high volume with hyper relevancy. So obviously we're building the actual infrastructure that will allow us to send these cold emails. And again, we're not spamming people because we're combining it with a hyper relevant strategy, which leads me into step 3. Step 3, which is crafting a hyper targeted cold email campaign. So what does this mean? What this means is, well, what we do is, number 1, based on the answers that we get from step 1, when we're understanding your business, we're crafting a really effective message for you. We're talking about the key value propositions of your product, of your service, talking about why these businesses would want to work with you. That's essentially what we're doing. Alongside that, we're also building a hyper-targeted leads list. So obviously the decision makers for the people that you will end up talking to over a Zoom call. That's essentially what we're doing. And based on what we talked about in step 2 and step 3, we're building a cold email system that will be able to easily land you at least 10 qualified sales calls every single month, because we're combining a strategy of volume. So we're sending more than 50 emails. We're sending a lot of emails, but we're also not spamming these people. And finally, in step 4 is the day-to-day management of the system. So what we try to achieve for all of our clients and why people work with us is because they're able to work with us, they're able to generate sales calls without them doing the actual work. We do the entire thing for them. We build the infrastructure and we manage it on a day-to-day basis, right? So we add new leads, we reply back to people, we answer all of their questions, all of their concerns, and the only thing that you need to do is jump on these sales calls that will pop up on your calendar. So John, I know I just ran you over all 4 of those key steps that we run through for all of our clients. I know I talked about it in really high detail and I didn't go into that much depth because I didn't want to bore you. So what questions do you have about the process specifically? So you see how I just did that pitch, and that is something very similar to what I personally say at my own agency. Obviously, every single time I pitch it, I'm way more personalized to whatever my prospects want as a result and what they consider a success, but that's the overall gist of what I talk about. So that's what I do. I don't use sales decks, but you could. I know in the beginning I used a sales deck. The risk that I found with a sales deck is what happens is when people pitch with a sales deck, they end up talking about a bunch of different things. And as a result, it gets boring, and it gets boring really, really quick. So that's why I don't use the sales deck. I literally just say what I just said, those 4 steps. And then I ask them, do you have any questions about the process specifically? And if they ask me about warming up emails or they ask me about building leads lists, then I go into way more detail. But I almost never just talk about all of these things, about building leads lists, using Apollo, using LinkedIn, using any of these things without people asking me, because it's a very inefficient method and you will bore people who just don't care. So that's basically the sales part. That's day 4. So as an action step to make sure this is actionable for you, I listed out 3 key things that you want to do if you want to succeed with your own lead generation agency and get to $10,000 per month in the next 90 days. So the very first thing you want to do is build out your sales script. So take this process, this flowchart of the sales process, take these 5 phases of the sales call and come up with specific questions. These are topics that I put over here. Come up with questions. The reason why I didn't provide questions is because I don't have a sales script. What I do is I would pull this up on a sales call. These are topics. And as I'm going through that sales conversation, I would read this and I would come up with questions on the spot. But that's just personally how I sell. A lot of people, they need a sales script. So if you need a sales script, come up with questions, specific questions surrounding these topics. That will probably take you around an hour, maybe 2 hours max to do. Build out your sales deck if you decide to use one. Again, I don't use a sales deck, but I know plenty of people who sell with sales decks and they do it extremely effectively. I think it's more of a preference thing. Again, I don't use it and I'm getting really good results, but a lot of people who also use it also get really great results. So I think this is more of a preference thing. If you are using a sales deck, don't make it too wordy, add a lot of illustrations, keep it easy to read, easy to follow. And just remember, if you are pitching with sales decks, don't end up talking about a lot of random minute details because again, people don't care, people will get bored, and if people get bored, you will lose the sale. And finally, I want you to build out your pre-nurturing sequences. So all of this stuff that we talked about, set up your Calendly, right? Set up these email reminders, come up with ideas for sales assets that you want to send to your prospects prior to the sales calls. Remember, the sales starts before the actual Zoom call. The sales starts the second you see the calendar invite on your Google Calendar, on your Microsoft Outlook calendar, whatever that looks like. Just remember that. These are the action steps. So that's basically day 4 of the 5-day to 10K to $10,000 challenge. Hope you found this valuable. Again, this is Sales, and I'll see you over in day 5. See ya. Bye-bye.